Hey everyone, Tom Salemi here. Welcome back to Device Talks Weekly. We've got a jam-packed episode as always for you. A little later in the program, I will speak with Abby Hunter-Syed of Olympus Ventures. I talked with her at Device Talks Boston. She's our FOMO speaker of the episode. And then a little later in the podcast, I will talk with Jim Alecxih, the new CEO of Virtual Incision, one of the cooler surgical robotics companies out there. We've talked about the Mira on this program before. We've had Virtual Incision at our meetings, and we'll have them at our meeting again coming up in Device Talks West, which is happening on October 15th and 16th. Shane Farrator, Chief Technology Officer and co-founder, will be on our telesurgery panel at Device Talks West. Again, that's happening on October 15th and 16th at the Santa Clara Convention Center. We'll have folks up there from Intuitive and Savato and MedCrypt and more, so in NVIDIA. So make sure you check that out. Go to west.devicetalks.com to register and check out the agenda. We're resuming our Device Talks Tuesdays this coming week. We actually have our Device Talks Deep Dive with Tesh Alavia. He is the Worldwide Vice President of R&D at Medication Delivery Solutions at BD. Tesh gave a great presentation at Device Talks Boston that I did not see because I was busy interviewing somebody downstairs on the floor. I did check into the room and it was jam-packed and I wanted to stay, but I couldn't. But it's good to be the king. I could ask Tesh to give the presentation again, and he very kindly agreed to. So if you missed it, if you pulled a Tom and missed his presentation at Device Talks Boston, you have a chance to, you have a second chance as well. Just go to devicetalks.com to register. It's free to watch. You can participate in the conversation if you watch live. But of course, you can also watch on demand. I won't be able to take your questions if you do that, but you'll still get all of the enjoyment and all of the insight. And that Device Talks Deep Dive is brought to you by S3 Connected Health and Electrocraft. And I'll be leading that conversation with Managing Editor Kayleen Brown. All right, without any further delay, let's start this Device Talks Weekly with our regular opening staple, Chris Newmarker and his Newmarkers, Newsmakers from the electronic pages of Mass Device. All right, you ready for this?
Ready.
Chris Newmarker, how are you, sir?
Doing okay, Tom. But yeah, it's been a tough week in Minneapolis.
Yeah, you folks have had a tough spell the last couple of months with these tragedies and attacks.
Yeah, this area has been through the ringer.
Yeah, how are things settling in? Your kids have not started school yet, is that right?
They have not. They start next week, so they'll probably. I don't think they've heard about this yet, but we'll have to probably discuss it with them at some point. But yeah, it's just tough news. I can't even imagine what those families at that school and church are going through. It's just it's tough news, and there's nothing. I mean, what do you say about it these days? I mean, it doesn't seem like we're people are being grown-ups and talking sensibly about doing anything to, solve these types of problems right now. So, hopefully, here's to hoping that we get there at some point.
Yeah, I mean, we won't turn this into a political conversation, but we clearly have a problem. I think I read in the paper this morning, it was something like 150 attacks on schools over the past year or so, of some sort or another. So there are issues that need to be addressed, and we should be looking at them. And I'm not trying to code this in a gun control versus non-gun control, but we do have a problem, and we need to figure out a solution. So
yeah, absolutely.
My heart goes out to the folks in Minnesota, those families particularly affected, but everybody. I mean, it's an assault on a whole community, and I know it's stressful, as we see on LinkedIn. Lots of comments from folks talking about where they were, how they're feeling. So not a lot to say other than we're really sorry this is happening.
Yeah. And, maybe just hope Minnesota can get a little peace for
Yeah.
a bit,
Yeah.
and really just hope they stay calm around Massachusetts too, Tom.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, knock wood. I don't want
Yeah,
to say anything about that, but yep.
sounds good.
Massachusetts and Indiana and everywhere else.
And everywhere else,
Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely.
So, all right.
Oh,
Let's again, we're here to support each other, and we hope folks who are listening and affected by this find some peace uh, at some point.
yeah,
Gosh, but all right, let's roll into the Newmarker's
yeah.
Newsmakers.
All right. Well, number 5 on the list, we've got a promotion over at Insulet. Eric
Yeah,
Benjamin getting promoted in the COO role. You interviewed him at one of our Device Talks events in recent years. He like graciously stepped in when their previous CEO stepped down. So
yeah, that was an unusual. That was 2022. Shacey Petrovic was supposed to be our keynote, and she
yeah,
made her decision to leave her post a week before the event. And Eric
yeah,
Benjamin came down and did a fantastic job representing Insulet. Really happy for this role. I mean, he's been there a long time,
yeah,
has a great skill set, and it just seems as if they're building out a great executive team. Of course, Ashley McAvoy came on as a CEO.
yeah,
So, nope, great to see Insulet expanding the leadership team. Of course, got a big force here in Massachusetts, and congratulations to Eric Benjamin. We will actually I'll have the opportunity to talk with Eric Benjamin in just a couple of weeks. He'll be part of our Device Talks Tuesdays Connected Health
fantastic.
series. And if you go to the Device Talks page, you can register. It's free. You can watch the presentation, ask questions. It's taking place September 16th at noon Eastern. You can watch it live and ask your questions, or you can watch it on demand and enjoy watching other people ask questions, but you might want to check it out live. So go to devicetalks.com to register for that. All right, what's number 4, Chris Newmarker?
Hey, number 4 on the list, we've got Recor Medical. They won regulatory approval in Japan for their
Mm-hmm.
Paradise Renal Denervation, tech, and you had a really good post on LinkedIn about that. Just commenting on the, they've really they stuck with this technology when there was a
Yeah,
lot of doubts, and they're competing against Medtronic, which is that at this point is still the largest med tech company in the world, and
not not
gosh,
not only stuck with it, they zigged when everyone else zagged, and they
yeah,
came in after the 2014 clinical trials that blew up the renal denervation industry. I mean, as I said in the post, Medtronic already committed $1 billion to buying Ardian. They were incented to make it work, but Utsaka came in and invested in Recor's Series D after that because they believed in Recor's use of ultrasound and its clinical trial plans. And then they actually had negotiated an interesting deal where they had the rights for commercial rights to Asia. It was a very pharma-like deal. But they
very
loved
cool.
the investment so much, they bought the company in 2018 and kind of made it
Yeah,
their third leg of their consumer and pharmaceutical businesses. So now they have a medical device business built around that. And hypertension's a big issue in
yeah,
Japan, and
big
it's great
big
that
issue everywhere.
it's a
So
big issue everywhere. You're right,
yeah,
but it's nice that they're able now to offer their services, their treatment to folks in Japan. So kudos to Otsuka for committing to
yeah,
renal innovation and for seeing it through. And if you talk to some people, they say that maybe Medtronic doesn't get an approval from the FDA if Otsuka didn't get approved a couple of weeks before. I'm not
hmm
sure if that's the case or not, but that has been said by folks like Ray Cohen, who is, of course, was with Vesix Vascular and
yeah,
was chair of Sonovi, so he knows his way around renal innovation. So
it's
thanks
interesting.
to Otsuka and Recor for their doggedness, and glad to see this business expand, not only with Recor but with Medtronic. So
Yeah,
exciting
and I'm
stuff.
sure Recor is owned by a Japanese company, and but it was still they beat Medtronic to it first there,
They
just
did.
as they got across the finish line in the U.S. first. So it's
Yep,
yeah, that's a great, really cool accomplishment for them.
absolutely. So good news
Yeah,
for everybody.
yeah,
What's
very
number
much
3,
so.
Chris Newmarker?
Number 3 on the list, we have 2 stories this week of Abbott executives. I mean, just to back up, I mean, Abbott's MedTech business has really been the growth driver in the company. Everything from their Freestyle Libre CGMs to all kinds of really cool cardiovascular neurostim products. So, I mean, you got all that going on, and now you got some of these Abbott executives in the medtech area leaving, and taking some like prominent roles in other medtech companies. So maybe there's some other medtechs that are looking to get some of that mojo going on, like by bringing in some of that talent. So we got two stories this year of this week of executives from Abbott like heading on to new positions. And the first one being like that over at GE Healthcare, they brought in Ivan Martinez as their new chief strategy officer, and Martinez previously was the most recently was the you know he well actually Martinez had 8 years at Abbott. In multiple leadership roles, and those include like Division VP of Strategy and Innovation, Division VP of Licensing and Acquisitions, Division VP of Strategic Initiatives. So definitely doing a lot of strategy over at Abbott, and now he's going to be the Chief Strategy Officer at GE Healthcare, like another major medtech. And the next one on the list is we've got Ambu is bringing in Scott Heinzelman as their president of their North American commercial region, and Scott at Abbott held roles as divisional VP of Sales and Marketing and global head of commercial excellence, as well as like he previously had senior leadership roles at Orthofix, Covidien, which is now Medtronic. But yeah, two really interesting appointments this week of involving people at Abbott getting tapped for new roles.
And of course, Scott Heiselman steps in for Stephen Block, who is a former president who has moved on to semi-retirement. And there's a DeviceTalks podcast connection there. Back in, I think, 2021.
Wow.
Early in the days, I'm trying to remember the exact date. We had Steve Block on the podcast along with then Ambu CEO Juan Jose Gonzalez. And we also had Boston Scientific's Brian Duncan and Dave Pierce on as well to talk about basically single-use endoscopes. Anyway, it was our first episode that really kind of shot us through the roof. That was the one that really caught fire. Yeah. That one kind of lit the fire. So very grateful to Steve Block playing a role in that. And Ambu is a very cool company. And we're going to see more from them, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, well, maybe we'll bring Scott on to DeviceTalks Weekly, like in coming months, see if we can bring some more of that Ambu magic back. That'd be great, Right, exactly.
Always could use more numbers for sure.
Hey, right, exactly. So, hey, number 2 on the list. This is a little more somber. We, and just to clarify, actually, all these are actually all right. Really quick, we've got. I need to be on a better roll about this type of stuff. Senior editor Sean Julio wrote the Insulet story. We have Sean writing the Recor medical story. We have senior editor Danielle Kirsch writing the Ambu story. We've got Sean writing GE Healthcare. And now on number 2, we had, Sean caught a Warren report in California, that showed Intuitive laying off 331 workers at their headquarters campus in Sunnyvale. And, we eventually got some more clarification from Intuitive. And, it really looks like the overall gist of what we're hearing from Intuitive was that they found some, ways to, better coordinate, schedule manufacturing teams, coordinate more effectively with the production of accessories for its ion robotic bronchoscopy system, which not as well known as their Da Vinci systems, but definitely a system that's been getting a lot of attention in recent years. But basically like it looks like they're trying to find some more efficiency in the way they make the accessories for this system in California.
Absolutely. And you mentioned the comment that Intuitive contributed after Sean initially posted the article, and I had shared it on LinkedIn. Within that, it said, our goal is to retain these employees in the roles on the standard shift schedule. However, we understand that the roles of the standard shift schedule may not be suitable for some of these employees, and we are committed to assisting their transition to alternative employment. So
Yeah.
sounds like it's when you see layoffs at a company that's surging, you there's always more to the story, and I think I said that on LinkedIn. We don't really know the details, but my larger point was, I think anyone who has Intuitive on their resume in this market is going to be able to find a new gig for sure. So
it's the dominant surgical robotics company right now, and has really been just seeing a lot of success in recent, really over the years. And one other thing that I think is interesting about this story is that Intuitive was especially exposed to all of this chaos unpredictability going on with tariffs, because 80% of the instruments and accessories around the Da Vinci robots are made in Mexico. So I mean, it could be that overall, and this is a total guess for me. I mean, I could very well just not know what I'm talking about here, but it could be that this could overall be good news for the making of these accessories here in the U.S. if they're like driving toward more efficiencies here. I wonder if in past years they might have been looking to like move this to Mexico or outside of the U.S., and instead they're trying to find a way to more efficiently make these accessories here.
Could be. I don't know.
Yeah.
Good question.
And I'll throw that question out there. So it's interesting.
Let's roll on to the big number one, Chris Newmarker.
Hey, the big number one is that we've got Terumo acquiring organ preservation device maker OrganOx for $1.5 billion. And we had a fun discussion on LinkedIn over it's like, is this medtech? And I definitely think it is. I mean, and it's really fascinating that you looked in the past. I mean, they literally, when you're transporting organs for transplant, they were putting them in coolers with like bags of ice, like you're going to a cookout or something. And now we have this just like really sophisticated technology to preserve organs and really get more of these life-saving transplanted organs to people. So it's just kind of an exciting space right now.
Yeah, and I know I had posted this on LinkedIn and questioning saying I never really saw it as medtech, and the Godfather Brian Johnson, founder of DeviceTalks,
It is medtech.
Just declared.
Brian doesn't talk like that, but yeah.
He
you
said
need a favor, Tom.
This is medtech, and I agree it is medical technology, and I agree they are addressing a critical problem. My prism for medtech always comes through now that I've been at DeviceTalks for so long, like I want people I look at medtech as these implantable devices that treat people as opposed to assist in the transportation of their organs. But it clearly is medical technology for sure, and welcome part of the medtech industry. So I'll rethink my thinking once again, and I'll say yes. Terumo obviously is medtech, OrganOx, and I know we've got a couple other companies out there as well in the space. And you had mentioned Transmedics, which of course has medical technology as well. But a lot of their business is also the doctors, I think, who are removing the organs. But it's a complex subset of medical technology. We'll say that
they're in the business of you're seeing like them owning airplanes, and like really to try to figure out the logistics. Which I mean, there's so many challenges in that space, and they're actually I'd recommend in recent weeks the New York Times The Daily had a really good overview of kind of the challenges we're seeing right now in organ transplant in the U.S., which was very enlightening. I mean,
they had an article as well, which probably preceded the podcast, where
there's some good reporting.
It's become a growing and even more important space for sure.
Yeah, I mean the good news. I mean, it's like the first Trump administration was really pushing for more, getting more organs to people, which is good. But now we've kind of had the flip side of like some challenges around, are we trying to take organs out of people who might not be ready for them to have their organs taken out yet, and as well on the flip side of like, are we being fair and getting those delivered to people? And so we're, there's a lot, but at the same time too, I remember even that daily episode they were saying that was something the Trump administration was actually like, yes, we are concerned about that too, and we want to do things about it. So
sure.
So there we go. So maybe we'll
All right. Well, it's clearly an important issue. I know I'm an organ donor. I think it's important. So
Absolutely. Me too.
it's great to see technology like this that will
Yeah.
hopefully allow organs that are available reach people more quickly and make them more effective in extending life. Chris Newmarker, great newsmakers. Take care.
All right, man. Take care.
All right. Thanks so much, Chris Newmarker. Now we're going to have our FOMO interview. Once again, I spoke with Abby Hunter-Syed of Olympus Ventures. We talked at DeviceTalks Boston, which was back in May. Listening to the, I was worried that some of the conversation might have been dated, but I don't think it is. I think we're still facing some of the questions that we were facing then. So I'm very happy to bring you this conversation with me and Abby Hunter-Syed, Senior Director at Olympus Ventures. Abby, thanks for joining us at Device Talks.
Thanks so much for having me.
So this is an interesting time within MedTech, and for once, it's really not an internal development that's making it interesting. We're seeing a lot of changes at the FDA. We're seeing a lot of new pressures being put on tariffs that no one can quite unpack or define. And I've been wondering, VCs really need to know the rules of the game in order to invest wisely. How has all this new uncertainty, and I think even the uncertainty is uncertain because you don't know if it's going to become certain and then uncertain again. How does that impact your approach as a VC in investing in startups?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fascinating, right? Because that's what venture capitalists are supposed to be masters of, is understanding where there's uncertainty, where there's risk, and then how you can mitigate against that.
Yeah.
But when the rules of the game are changing so dramatically, so rapidly, that instability automatically leads you to think like, okay, I need to hold my position versus expand across it, right? And so I think it's one of the main things that I see VCs across the landscape doing, which is I need to hold more in reserve in order to support the portfolio that I already have. Mm-hmm. Instead of thinking about diversifying that portfolio or bridging out and funding more things, because you just don't know what the road ahead for your existing portfolio is. And so I think that that's one of the things that we've definitely seen across the landscape at the moment is in the face of instability, we're holding closer to core and making sure that we've got the reserves there to support the companies that we've already invested in.
So backing up a bit, what is your charter at Olympus Ventures? Are you investing to acquire? Are you investing for ROI? I think both is probably the answer, but how is your success measured?
Yeah, so Olympus Innovation Ventures, we invest in medical devices, diagnostics, and digital health tools that complement or extend where all of our market-leading endoscopic solutions are. And so when we look at results and what we're looking for out of OIV, is we're really looking at the 10-year time horizon. What's going to move the needle in endoscopy? And so we both measure investment returns and M&A as our two top KPIs that we're looking to hopefully generate results and value both for the industry and for Olympus.
So you're not looking for a lot of shots on net necessarily backing a lot of companies just to get a sense of what's out there. Your companies need to perform as investments. So how is your process of doing a due diligence and evaluating those companies changed, especially with things like tariffs and again the uncertainty of the FDA? Like, how are you looking at where these products may be made? Are you looking at, what has your review process changed at all for new investments?
I mean, I think that macro lens has to come into everybody's diligence process, right? Like when you've got a really complex device that's manufactured in pieces across the globe,
right?
It's going to impact everyone, right? And so it's one of those things that we're trying to figure out candidly in real time. How do we measure that? Because everybody's exposed to it. It just depends on how much exposure is there. And then is there things that you can be done to mitigate against that, especially leveraging the expertise and the insights of having somebody like Olympus as a backer? Can we bring that unique value add to the table to help mitigate some of that risk from a device perspective?
Interesting. So looking at the FDA again, you need to know how many hoops your company needs to jump through, how high they are, how big they are. From your perspective as a VC, do you have as good a sense of those things as you did 3 or 4 months ago?
High level, no.
Yeah.
But I think that the FDA has always kind of been a moving benchmark.
Fair point. Yeah.
You knew where they were going and what they wanted, but it always depended on who's the reviewer. How well do they know this space? Is this a brand new technology? What are they going to look for from a biocompatibility perspective? There's so many different elements to it that can always fluctuate or change. And so some degree of uncertainty has always been measured into the diligence process as you're thinking about what these companies are going to have to go through. And part of it is just hearing back from the companies, what are they getting from the FDA? I think the unique piece of it today is that FDA division might be gone tomorrow.
Yeah.
And that is just a whole new level that I think companies and venture capitalists just haven't seen before, at least in my life cycle as a VC so far.
Mine either, as a journalist covering the area. So last question, just for startups who are watching this and wondering, what do I have to do to convince Olympus to at least look at us and possibly invest? What are you looking at from startups, and what? Well, I'm going to ask another question. So forget the whole last question part. What are you looking for in startups? What are some things they can tell you that will at least continue the conversation and get some additional meetings?
Yeah, I think we're always looking at team, right? And especially in the face of such uncertainty like we're facing today, that team becomes an even higher component in this, and that how transparent are they going to be with you on which hurdles are coming up? How open are they going to be about the challenges that they're facing internally that we may be able to help with? Do they have the right advisors around the table to assist them with that? Are they thinking about things in an iterative way? Are they planning in multiple scenarios? And so there's so many things that are just, people at the end of the day that I think this increases importance of from my lens.
That's interesting. So there's always been sort of a scale, like teams versus tech. And most people will not invest in a bad tech with a good team or a good team with a bad tech. But it seems from your point, like the team part is starting to weigh down a little more, because you need to know those companies can react and can respond.
Absolutely.
Final question. This will actually be my final question. As a corporate investor, do you feel any sense of greater responsibility sort of being out there and investing in companies? And I know you have to invest wisely, but there are still VC firms out there, not as many as there used to be. Angel investors, I bet, are going to become fewer and fewer. How do you see Olympus's role playing in the financing of startups in the future? Yeah,
I think that we're a critical piece of this ecosystem, right? I was just looking at some evidence the other day where it's something like 60% of companies that get acquired in this space had a strategic investor on board, right? And so we're this critical traction point for early stage companies who are looking to build really unique devices, really unique therapies that hopefully can improve patients' lives. And so I think that role doesn't diminish at all. If anything, I think it just continues to grow, especially when there is such uncertainty or instability in the funding environment from LPs. But even big companies, we're facing those same exact challenges that startups are.
Yep, very true.
And so it's a little bit chicken or the egg, and that we are depending on the startups to be innovative and to grow in order to help the ecosystem as a whole grow. And those startups are depending on us to help fund, to encourage innovation and so much more. And so, I think we really do depend so much on each other and working well together. And hopefully, those humans that I was talking about from a team perspective, we're all humans at the end of the day. And so working together in order to solve these problems and hopefully create greater, better stability for us all in the future is hopefully where it's going.
Hopefully. Oh, well, great. Well, thank you so much for this this sense of where we are and possibly where we're headed in the future of financing.
Thanks so much for having me, Tom. And, DeviceTalks, this is absolutely brilliant what you've created here. Thank you for including me.
Thank you so much. All right, it was great to have Abby Hunter-Syed at DeviceTalks Boston. She also appeared on our venture panel and was around for both days. So it was great to have her there. Now let's get into our keynote conversation. Once again, I spoke with Jim Alecxih. Jim comes to Virtual Incision through a few different medical device companies, and he'll recount his career here. But most notably, he was started with Intuitive Surgical in 2000. He'll talk about what that was like, and he'll also lend a lot of insight, shine a lot of light on Intuitive's strategy for rolling out the Da Vinci systems. Well, Jim Alecxih, welcome to the podcast.
Well, thanks so much for having me. I'm anxious to have a great conversation.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to getting the update on virtual incision. We've told the story here before. We've had you at our meetings as well. Most recently, John Murphy was at DeviceTalks West. But this is a fast-moving surgical robotics sector, and things just keep moving, and it's an evolving one as well. I mean, and we're going to get into your background, but you're a medtech guy with some surgical robotic experience as well. But it's interesting to see as we move into commercial stage for surgical robotics companies, and I want to unpack that challenge for you. But I'll stop talking and ask you a question. Jim, how'd you find your way into the medtech industry?
I put my way through college by being a paramedic.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, and so I spent a year out of college doing another business in sales, selling copiers actually, and like most med device reps, had to do a year of B2B, and then just wanted to get back in, and found a little company called Automated Instruments in Florida that a friend of mine knew about, and I interviewed with Automated Instruments and got the job, and in 1990, hard to believe it was that long ago, but right at the laparoscopic boom, as lap choles were coming up, and so it was with Automated Instruments, which was a division of U.S. Surgical, and really cut my teeth and learned how to be a great salesman and eventually a manager there. So it was a great learning experience.
So was it the patient experience that you sort of wanted to reconnect with? Was it the healthcare setting? What was it that drew you to medtech?
Really, if I'm being honest, it was the customers.
Okay.
When you do B2B and you sell kind of to all kinds of different people, I mean, to sell to surgeons, super smart, professional, demanding, require you to be on your game, to provide, clinical value, to be in the operating room environments, not for everybody. And I just, those set of challenges really intrigued me. And I thought to myself, I don't think everybody can do this. And those are the kind of challenges I love. And so that's really what drew me to it. And I think the discipline of Automated Instruments, was also, I grew up in a military family, and I loved that kind of discipline. And so I was drawn to that as well.
That's great. So where did you move on from after Automated Instruments?
I met a guy named Tom Davison, and he was starting a little company called Ultricision.
Okay.
And out of Rhode Island. The harmonic scalpel was our product, and I was one of their very first reps, and so a group of us joined at the same time, and sold the harmonic scalpel, and it was really my first experience into venture capital and investors. They sold it way too early, in my opinion, but I was a junior person, and so I had no say in it, but. I knew that harmonic scalpel was a significant technology, and all all kudos to Ethicon, what they've made that technology. It's really great. But I did that, and then I stayed with J&J for 3 years. Did Indigo, and then in 2000. I got a call from Intuitive Surgical, and it was a startup, had just done an IPO, and I decided to fly to California and see what it was all about, and so took a test drive on Da Vinci. Certainly not the Da Vinci that you see today.
I was going to say, I mean, this was not a sure bet back then. Getting a call from it, I remember writing about this in the late '90s, and I still didn't understand what there's a robot. Like what are you talking about? Anyway, I just had to write 300 words. Like I get it. That's all I need, but. It was an oddity, I think, more than anything. And when it went public, I remember being kind of surprised. What was it about the call that intrigued you?
I love new technology, and I didn't really know what to expect. Is before, I mean, hate to say it's 2000. I mean, before iPhones, before Google, and so there wasn't like I couldn't go to Chat GPT and say, "Hey, you just you kind of took it for granted." And so I
remember those days. Yeah,
I knew J&J and I were not a fit, and I think they felt the same way. And I love Johnson & Johnson. I met my wife there, and but I think that there are different companies for different people and life cycles of companies, and I'm more of an early stage guy, and so I got in and I sat down, had no skins on it. I mean, it was a prototype, and and so I didn't know exactly what it was or what it could be, but I knew that it was significant because I had just spent a couple of years. This is back for your younger listeners; they'll be shocked at this. This is back when reps scrubbed in, and so I used to scrub in and hold the camera for laparoscopic cholecystectomies because the nurse would be all over the place, and so the way they treat reps was a lot different than they did it a long time ago, and so. Uh, I had seen the challenges of laparoscopy, and I had seen that it was kind of a bifurcated market. You had this super select group of people that were facile with straight stick laparoscopy, the one percenters, and then everybody else struggled and at varying levels of competence. And when I sat down on it, and I had been in urology for a couple of years with Indigo. So I hadn't been on a laparoscopic system in probably, I don't know, 2.5 or 3 years. And I did a running suture in 5 minutes. And I mean, it just came back to me and I was like, wow, this is a game changer. And there's no way that I could ever tell you that I thought that Intuitive would be Intuitive of today, but I thought that it was really significant and so much more exciting than what I was doing, and more of an early stage startup company that just really was attractive to me, and so that's why I decided to go.
So talk a bit about those first encounters with potential customers that you're bringing Intuitive to them as an opportunity to buy. I mean, what were people grasping what you were talking about? You had to create a whole new narrative and a whole new way of selling, I would imagine. This is not a harmonic scalpel or a lap tool or anything like that.
Yeah, the funny thing is, I was at SRS recently, and I actually, it's funny that the booth that I knew the least amount of people in was Intuitive. There was all kinds of Intuitive vets all in the other booths, but you look at and the folks with Intuitive, and they've done a great job. But there's two things that people that have joined Intuitive even the last 15 years don't understand them. The first is what the reception was, bringing something new to market. And the second thing is that Intuitive's success was not always guaranteed. And so now you look at it, 8, 9, 10 billion in revenue, 200 billion in market cap. It's like, of course it's Intuitive, right? But back then it was a lot different. And so the first challenge was, if there's a spiritual component to surgery, that is really, I think the center of that would be the relationship between a patient and a physician as there's an incision, and that physician puts his or her hands into somebody to fix them. Like that's a sacred bond that a patient's trusting a surgeon. And so imagine saying, at that crux, you've gone through your whole career, and at that moment is the ultimate bond between physician and patient. And you have a salesman that comes in and says, I'd like to put a robot at that point and have you sit 15 or 20 feet away. And I mean, it was just such a paradigm shift. And so before you got to how does it work? What is it used for? How expensive is it? How, all those type of things, how much do I have to compromise in terms of instruments? Because there were only 9 instruments in the beginning. All those questions came first. It was like you had to convince somebody that this was such a worthwhile investment of their time and energy that they would put a technology between themselves and the patient. And we used to practice all the time. How quickly could you undock the system and have a physician scrub in and make an emergency laparotomy in case there was a problem? And so, of course, they probably don't practice that much anymore. They would fix it all with the robot now. But those were the first. Those were the first things, and then you came into people that had spent their whole career refining laparoscopic skills, one percenters that, of course, looked at this and said, okay, this levels the playing field. And so, of course, they're against it because you're taking their business. You're bringing less facile surgeons, less skilled surgeons, less experienced surgeons, and bringing them onto a par with a 1% laparoscopic surgeon. And so, and then you got into cost and logistics and instruments and all the things. So there was a lot of opposition in the beginning, and I think it was I think one of the key elements of success, besides being persistent and really being technologically proficient, was picking the right type of surgeon. And because there was a lot of, what I call fiddle factor. It wasn't as smooth as it is today, or even some of the other generations. The original one, it had a lot of issues that we'd have to silence the alarm button frequently. You'd have to make some compromises, but you had to pick the right surgeon that would put up with all that because they thought it was a facilitating technology. And so that was one of the challenges.
So you're credited for helping to develop the go-to-market strategy for Da Vinci at the start. So was there a thread that you found that worked, a single sort of universal message that resonated, or was it really surgeon by surgeon, hospital by hospital? What does a strategy like that look like for such a revolutionary device?
Yep, I think what really helped guide my experience that led me to to develop that strategy was trying to sell systems into cardiac surgeons in Houston. This is before we pivoted to urology, and I was selling two well-known cardiac surgeons at the same time, and I just couldn't close it. And there was a time when my job was in jeopardy because I couldn't close those systems. They lost confidence that I could do it, and so I wrote down what I thought was every step of the sales process, and it became a tool called the Xbox. And basically, it's an ability to articulate every stakeholder in the process. And what I found was that the reason I hadn't sold it, because the doctors were sold, I thought I had clinical champions, I thought I had administrative support. But what I found was that the nurses were against it. And they were actively holding the sale back. And so when I stepped back and I said, okay, why would they be against it? And I found that every metric that they were judged on, operative time, cost, overall budget, number of people, etc. You go down the list. Every metric that they were judged on, Da Vinci hurt. It was more expensive on their budget line. It cost more people. It was longer procedure times. It backed up their schedule. Their throughput was down. All those kind of things. And so they weren't thinking strategically like this could really help. They were thinking like, why would I bring this into my OR? Because it just disrupts everything that I've tried to do from being a great organization. And so what I did was that helped me really figure out how to do value propositions for every stakeholder in the game. So what I did was we came up with really the 4 Ps, which were patients, physicians, providers, and payers. And if you could craft and articulate a value proposition that resonated with each of those stakeholders, you'd have something pretty significant. And so that's what we did. And then to add on to that was we believed that there was a correlation in patients' minds that said if you're the leader in technology, that equates to high-level quality care. And so if you looked at all the billboards that happened 15 or 20 years ago, that was part of the strategy to say, if you let people know, if you let patients know that you're at the cutting edge of technology, they'll equate that you're also on the cutting edge of quality care. And you can draw patients into your facility using that. And so that's how all the billboards and radio ads and
Wow.
TV ads, that was the genesis behind that.
That was an intentional, but it wasn't just a byproduct of the sales. It was an intentional part of
Absolutely. We actually had a thing called DVP in a box, Da Vinci prostatectomy in a box, and it was all kinds of B-roll and everything. It was basically, we gave you about $100,000 worth of media, and all you had to do was put your name on it, and it was radio ads, TV ads, print ads, all completely done. And,
Wow.
yeah, and so we had a world-class clinical marketing department that put all together. Ryan Rhodes was amazing and just a phenomenal executive. And so we put all that together for our customers, and it was really effective.
And was that sort of the first D2C to campaign in medtech? I'm trying to think of something else where
not the first. I mean,
not the first, but
I remember there being billboards about knees,
fair point.
Artificial knee. And I'd be like, why are you tell me why you're advertising to patients a technology. And so they really, in our campaigns, they were using a technology to advertise the hospital. And it wasn't only about Da Vinci. It was like, we have Da Vinci.
Right.
And so we didn't pay any of we had no or very, very little advertising budget. And so all those were paid by individual hospitals, by our customers. Intuitive didn't pay for any of that.
Interesting. Yeah, no, you're right. Good distinction. So, and I really quickly, I want to hit upon you moved over to, were you in New Zealand and Australia?
Oh yeah. I
But did you go there, or were you still based in the Valley?
Yeah. Device Technologies is a fantastic distributor, and that was really my first foray into the international market. Had Canada, had South America, Central and South America, and so we started. It was really the beginning of the international strategy. I mean, at that point, the domestic sales were 90+% of the total revenue. But it was really my first foray into international markets, and I had a great experience with our distributors there.
Okay. So, and then you became president and CEO real quick of Free Air. Was that was being a CEO sort of part of your storyline? Is that where you saw yourself headed, or?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly had aspirations, but more I think that when you get into a hyper competitive environment like Intuitive, it's easy to put people, kind of in a pigeonhole, like you're really good at this and keep doing it. And I came to a point in my career where I was like, what else could I prove from a commercial standpoint? I mean, I helped build this from essentially first revenue to 2 billion. I had done multiple sales forces. I had, been part of a team that really revolutionized the industry. And so I just was interested in doing something that I didn't know anything about, that scared me, and that frightened me. And so what was that? That was manufacturing, supply chain, engineering, quality, regulatory, all of the things that I didn't know anything about, but I was interested in. And Free Air was a fantastic opportunity. It was based in Shenzhen, China. I commuted for the better part of 2
Really?
years. Yeah, and I was introduced to my first foray into manufacturing was an introduction to Foxconn, maybe the preeminent manufacturer in the world, and so I had some amazing Chinese mentors that just shepherded me through. Quickly realized that I had no idea what I was talking about, and served as mentors and teachers, and I learned a lot about what to do and what not to do, and so it was a fantastic experience.
That's great. I feel guilty skimming over these roles, but you're chief commercial officer at ViewRay, you're president at Trisalis, you were CEO just prior to this at DH Medical. So DH Medical is interesting, and then we can move over to virtual incision. But so this was imaging, video transmission, signal processing for diagnostic accuracy and surgical precision. Talk a bit about that company and how does it work into where you are now? I can see your connection, I think.
Well, it's really interesting. The company was founded and is chaired by a prolific guitar manufacturer named Paul Reed Smith,
Hmm.
a genius on multiple levels from an engineering standpoint and just a builder. And he had developed these technologies primarily for military applications and national security. So a lot of three-letter agencies in DC, and so they kept on getting inquiries from Hopkins, and they had friends at Hopkins that said there's so many medical applications, and so it's AI and machine learning software that really processes video, and so one of the things I had just come out of Trisalis, and I had seen the impact of fluoroscopy on physicians. I mean, if you've ever seen a radiologist, their hands, an interventional radiologist has all kinds of generally damage to their hands. They have cataracts in their eyes, and people don't know that aren't in radiology the impact of radiation on providers. It's amazing, and so it was kind of I couldn't believe it. I had spent my entire career in surgery, and I go down to the basement and go into these fluoro labs, and you have these incredibly dedicated physicians and technologists and nurses that are being exposed to radiation all day long. I just couldn't believe it.
Wow.
And so this opportunity came really out of the middle of nowhere, and I thought, boy, if you could process the image and reduce radiation exposure to physicians and staff and patients, you'd really have something great. And that's exactly what we did. And I love that company. I certainly love aspects of software. The margins are beautiful in the software business. And so, but I will say this: you get at the point I am in my career, you find out exactly where you fit and what you love and what you don't. And there is something so satisfying about walking on a manufacturing floor and picking up something and say, this is what I make and this is what I sell versus software where you just install it. And so, but I will, Tom, I will take 1 minute to tell you about another technology that DH Medical has that I think is going to revolutionize the cancer business. And so Paul Reed Smith is a master musician and sound technologist, has worked with musicians all over the world, and his brother got cancer. And so he went to Hopkins and he said, tell me about what is cancer and how does it work? They were like, well, we don't know exactly. We have lots of theories. And so he believed and started his experiments that cancer cells communicate with each other. And so what he didn't know was, did they communicate mechanically or chemically? And he found that indeed cancer cells do communicate with each other, and they communicate acoustically, vibrationally.
Really?
And they actually emit an acoustic signature. And cancer cells emit a completely different acoustic signature than healthy cells. And so he developed an acoustic microscope that measures sound at the cellular level, minus 140 decibels at 2 to 3 hertz. And so below the level of the human hearing, incredibly quiet. And he and that company can measure the sensitivity or resistance to chemotherapy in less than 10 seconds based on the acoustic signature. So you could actually hear cells die
Wow.
as chemo is introduced, or you can hear cells basically resist chemo. And so it's real-time sensitivity testing for chemo agents. And I think, it's a research project, but I think it's over the course of the next 5 years or something. Dr. Bill Nelson at Hopkins is involved, and Paul Reed Smith. It's a fascinating technology that I'm super passionate about. It's why I stayed on the board at DH Medical.
So let's move the conversation to where you are today, virtual incision. This is like Intuitive was 20 years ago. I think a unique product, unlike I think most of the other surgical robotic systems that people are familiar with. There's a lot more coming down the pike that I think are equally curious as Mira. But introduce listeners. As I said, we've had John on the podcast before. It's been a while. Introduce folks to Mira and to virtual incision, and then we can kind of get into how you're hoping to do for virtual incision, what you did for Intuitive a bit ago.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll start with, I've been out of robotics for about 10 years, and you can imagine I've been called on a number of jobs over the course of those 10 years to come back into robotics. And, I consistently said, no, thanks. I helped Intuitive, at some level be successful and, early on. And I just, I love Intuitive. I love Da Vinci. I love the people there. And I didn't have any desire to go and do it again. And so, but over the course of time, I developed for myself a list of what I thought must be true, not only for me to invest my time and energy and career into robotics, but what I thought would have to be true to be successful in the marketplace.
Uh-huh.
And I just determined until I found a technology that fit these 4 criteria, I was not going to do. I would go and I love DH Medical.
Uh-huh.
And could have stayed there for a very long time, but virtual incision hit these 4 notes for me. So the first is I thought that a successful robot had to be a different form factor. I couldn't think of a single market where one form factor fit every application. It's like you only get one car, and so it's great when you have a Model T, but as competition comes, there becomes different form factors, and you have F-150s and Ferraris.
Uh-huh.
And so I was just at SRS, and it looked to me, and I say this respectfully, that engineers were like, "Hey, that Da Vinci's successful. I'm going to make one that looks just like that one." And so, and I thought that if you had Da Vinci Light, physicians would ultimately say, "Well, give me the full featured one. Give me why would I compromise on features when I could have Da Vinci? If it looks and feels like Da Vinci, give me the real thing."
Uh-huh.
And then I think Intuitive is really smart about an ecosystem and building a moat around their product. And so, it's not just using another robot. It's leaving their ecosystem to use another robot. And that's
Nice.
a big decision.
Yep,
And
yep.
that's why, I think Intuitive is genius. But I thought if you had a different form factor, something that looked and felt different. And so what would that be? It would be smaller and simpler. And so if you drew a graph, an X and Y graph, and you said cost and features, and you said, well, where does robotics go? It always goes high and right, more costly and more features. So you look at DV5 and how much more costly and how much more featured it is than the robot that I sold in 2000. And they just continue to drive that. And so you think, where is the natural market for a super featured, expensive robot? And it's high acuity care cases. So the second thing I thought had to be true was that you had to pick a robot that was specifically designed for a market. And you had to pick a market and say, this robot belongs in this market. The interesting thing about Intuitive is, over the course of time, we started with cardiac, we went to urology, and we're successful. And then as the growth curve started to slow, we pivoted to other specialties, gynecology and general surgery, and other procedures within those specialties. And so, if you look at from a macro standpoint, you would just say, well, look at Intuitive's growth. It continues to climb, but really, it's a series of adoption curves underneath that. And so, right now, Da Vinci's kind of a one-size-fits-all. It's over a broad breadth of specialties and procedures, but that's 25 years in the making.
Mhm.
And so to come to market and say, well, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to be a Swiss Army knife and I'm going to be used everywhere is a really difficult go-to-market strategy. So I was looking for a purpose-built robot. And then the third thing is I thought you had to have a white space in the market. And I would get these calls and I would say, well, tell me the market thesis behind a new robot. They'd be like, well, there's access issues. I'd be like, you got access issues. So you have maybe the greatest sales force in the history of the medical device industry with a company with a nearly unlimited balance sheet that will give you the robot if you'll use it. And your market thesis is that there's access issues. That doesn't sound too smart to me. And so I heard, well, they're hugely successful. There's room for a number two. Customers want a number two player. And I'll be like, that's like people that go into the Chinese market and their go-to-market philosophy is, well, there's 2 billion Chinese, and if I just get 1% of the market, I'll be rich. I'm like, that is not an effective sales and marketing strategy. And so I said there had to be a white space in the market. Someplace I defined that as Intuitive didn't want to go, was a secondary market, or couldn't go. And so if you believe deeply, as I do, in the benefits of robotic surgery over open and laparoscopic, you would look at markets that have high open surgery occurrence, low straight stick laparoscopy, high conversion rates. And of course, that's the community hospital and the ASC environment. But you can't, might be your beachhead, but you have to have a device that can move up market.
Mhm.
And then my fourth criterion, probably the most important, was that I don't believe in lost leaders in the medical device industry. It might work in some industries, but not this one. It's really hard to fix your cost of goods in this business while you're on the market. And so I thought there was a lot of robotics companies that were basically their overall strategy was, well, if I sell 100 robots and I do 20,000 procedures, I've proven to the market that there's room for a number two player and somebody will come by me. And but they lose money with every procedure and they have a huge burn rate. And so I didn't want to be involved in that. I wanted to be involved in a company that had a cost profile and a cost of goods sold that could make money right out from inception. And so virtual incision, due to its simplicity and low complexity, has a cost structure that's unrivaled in the industry. And so those are really the four criteria that I set for myself. And as I evaluated the virtual incision opportunity, I was like, wow, this really fits. And so I thought, I looked at the robotic market and where I thought it would go in the next 3 to 5 years, and where I thought the market opportunities would be, and I thought virtual incision had a unique opportunity.
So how does Mira check all those boxes? Give us a bit. Describe the device for folks who should go to virtualincision.com and take a look. But
Yeah, please do, and look at our system. I mean, probably The biggest design change that you'll see is, almost all, if not all of the robots on the market have their motors on the outside of the patient. So if you look at all the instruments, they're long instruments with cable and pulley systems that generate movement with an end effector at the end of the instrument, but the motors are actually in the component outside of the patient. And so what we did was we put the motors, the actual robotic part of the system, inside the patient. And so our arms are very short because our motors are right at the end. And so what that does is it makes a completely stable outer post. So it's single port surgery. You make an umbilical incision, you insert the entire robot inside the patient, and you attach it to the bed, and that part of the robot that's outside the patient is completely stationary. And so you look at some of the images of the real estate, the patient real estate on an operating room, and there's hardly any room for anesthesiologists, for first assist, for all those people that are around the patient because arms are moving back and forth, and it's very crowded. Whereas ours is stationary, and it's one post, and so everything's inside the patient. So that's the first thing that's very unique. The second thing is, and this speaks to the complexity issue, is there are no drapes for our system. Our entire robot is sterilized, and so we don't have any drapes that need to be put around our system, and so that makes us quite unique in the marketplace. We're definitely purpose built for low acuity care cases, cholecystectomies, gallbladder surgery, hysterectomies, gynecology procedures, hernia. They're high volume, but they're low complexity, low acuity cases, and that's really where our target market is.
So what are you offering those institutions that use Mira? Is it a faster procedure, more greater efficacy? What's the selling point or points?
Well, I think for our target market is, I think there's a lot of places where if you gave them a four-armed robotic system, they couldn't execute on it. And because transient staffs, it takes a long time. I mean, Da Vinci's a team game. And, they have dedicated staffs. How you set the system up is really important to your overall success. The arms need to be in the right position. The ports need to be placed properly. And so we take all that complexity out. And so we can have, we've done tests where we've trained nurses how to use our system. And then 3 weeks later, we bring them back. They haven't seen it and see if they can reproduce it. And they can. And so that low complexity is going to be very, very important for ASCs and community hospitals. And I think that there's no way that we can compare to the feature set of a four-arm system, whoever makes it. And we don't try to. Our comparator is open surgery and laparoscopy. And so you ask yourself, what benefits do we bring over open surgery and over straight stick laparoscopy? And it's multiple. It's all of the same benefits that robotic surgery brings over those other modalities. And so, for those places that don't use robotics, that primarily do open surgery, we can bring mechanical assistance and the advantage of robotics into their facility. I think that's going to be quite impactful.
So what's the value proposition that you've created for them, as you did back in with Da Vinci? Who are the players, and where do they land on the value proposition question?
Well, I think for patients, it's certainly the clinical benefit of robotic surgery versus a high conversion rate from laparoscopy to open, and open surgery to begin with. So I think we have a great advantage for patients. For physicians, it's the ability to do minimally invasive surgery using a facilitating technology. And then for providers, Intuitive, and I've certainly assisted with this, really created a consolidation strategy.
Mhm.
Said if you can amortize a capital purchase over the broadest base of patients, the finances of that work beautifully. And so how do you do that? That was the billboard strategy. You could bring those patients from ASCs, from community hospitals that didn't have robotics, and you could bring them into a robotics program and make a great return on investment. And so that consolidation is being undone. And so low acuity care cases like gallbladder cholecystectomies probably belong in an ASC versus a main OR.
Mhm.
And so we're bringing robotics into those things. Now, certainly, we're in eyes wide open that the incumbents, Intuitive and others, are going to say, "Well, I've got a strategy. I'll give you one for free, and you can use it and try to reduce cost." Um, my analogy, it's still using a Ferrari to haul your boat. And, so we're not a Ferrari, we're an F-150, but we're purpose built,
Mhm.
for the job at hand. And so if the Ferrari dealer said, "I know you need to haul a boat, and I'll give you another Ferrari, a used one for cheap, for free." You say, "Well, that's great, thank you, but I still need to haul my boat." And so, I think that as the capital evolves in the industry, you can certainly have a strategy of, hey, one size fits all, and I'll reduce my price, and I'll reduce, and I'll, take the risk of degrading my brand to go down market. Or you can say, well, here's a robot that is custom made for gallbladders, for hernias,
Mhm.
for gynecology, and so that's our market, and certainly there's a cost aspect to it, and I think it's what I call economic rationality is going to return to hospitals where they're like, I don't know if I need a $2 million, DV5 to do a chole. It's
Mhm.
nice. My physicians like it. I amortize my capital expenditure over a broader base of patients. But if I had a custom built robot that was designed for these procedures, I could have the benefits of robotics in high acuity and low acuity care cases where it made sense economically. And so that's our macro message to all the stakeholders.
Is the system, sterilizable? This isn't s
Yeah,
so
yeah, it's sterilizable. It can be used 90 times
okay.
before it needs to be retired.
And what do you have a public price point you're sharing?
Not really. We're still in our marketing phase where we're trying to develop our strategy. We're really
Mhm.
primarily focused on bringing our Gen 2 device. Our Gen 1 device was de novo authorized a couple years ago, um, and we have a colectomy clearance, but we're really hyper focused on our Gen 2 device and a gynecology clearance, and then moving on to general surgery and other procedures. And so our focus is for sure regulatory and engineering, product development. Going through the V&V process, and so we're pretty hyper focused, but we'll be ready to share more as we get closer to market introduction.
But what is your do you have a sense of what your sales team is gonna look like or the campaign is gonna look like? You gonna be all direct, or do you have distributors for this sort of thing? Or I imagine it's all a direct team.
Yeah, we'll be direct, and I
Yeah.
think we'll be thoughtful about our model and what it looks like. I think we're going to put most of our resources around utilization. And I think at the end of the day, the market's going to be super crowded from a capital standpoint, and people are going to leverage their balance sheets to try to put capital in, but it's going to be a utilization game, and so we want to put our SG&A money into utilization people and have really outstanding clinical reps, and provide clinical support for our customers so that they feel comfortable in saying, yes, it's part of my armamentarium. I use it every week. And so that's going to be our primary focus. CapEx, we have kind of a different view of it. And as we refine our strategy in the future, I'd love to share it with you.
And final question, do you have a story for patients? If you're seeing someone at a barbecue or someone and they ask, why would I want your device, the device now that you're able to hold on your manufacturing floor? What's your message to patients about Mira and why it's important?
Well, I guess I have two. First is that minimally invasive surgery is better than open surgery. And robotics is better from an outcome standpoint than traditional minimally invasive surgery. And single port robotics, using their data, single port robotics is better clinically than multi-port robotics. And so in the richest country in the world, your access to the standard, what I believe should be the standard of care for surgical care, robotics, single port robotics, is dictated by how close you live to a metropolitan area. And so I saw a presentation by Gary Goodhart at LSI, and he talked about a study that Intuitive done that looked into what the difference in quality of care from a technology standpoint was in terms of distance. So as the epicenter, if you had a hospital with all the greatest, latest technology, how far did you have to go in a ring, distance-wise, until you found 10-year-old technology that was, this is what we use because this is what we could afford. And the amazing thing was that distance was 4 miles. And so you think we're the richest country in the world. And we know clinically, all the data suggests what I just said, that there's that single port robotics is the best for the patient, but they don't have access to it. And so, my barbecue pitch would be, virtual incision has the opportunity to democratize the standard of care, the best quality care for all patients. And it might not look or feel like the super sophisticated robots that you see on the billboards, but this does a great job, and it gives all those benefits, clinical and quality of life and outcome benefits to patients that don't have access to it now. And if they do have access, they have to travel for it. And so we can bring that back to their local communities. And so we're pretty excited about our mission and feel like we're going to be quite successful.
That's great. I feel like the F-150 line is going to resonate with a lot of people and connect. So
yes, I have to say, I had a friend of mine, when I gave him that line, sent me an Instagram post of some guy with a Bentley pulling a John boat out of a creek. Beautiful. So, but anyway.
Well, great.
It's always a pleasure to talk to you, and I love to tell our story, and it's a process. There are easier businesses than surgical robotics, but what a challenge, and hopefully what a reward at the end.
Well, I'm glad you found your way back to surgical robotics, and I'm grateful you joined us on the podcast. Thanks, Jim.
Well, thanks. Take care.
Well, that is a wrap. Thanks so much for joining me on Device Talks Weekly. Once again, I hope you'll join us on Tuesday for our Device Talks Deep Dive with Tesh Tarlavia, Worldwide Vice President of R&D at Medication Delivery Solutions, brought to you by Electrocraft and S3 Connected Health. You can register at devicetalks.com. Come with your questions. Tesh is a delight to talk to, and you will learn a lot. Also, make sure you don't miss an entire event by not attending Device Talks West. That's happening on October 15th and 16th at the Santa Clara Convention Center. You can register for that at west.devicetalks.com. I mentioned at the top, we've got our telesurgery panel. We'll also be talking about interventional tools, connected health. We'll have Tim Schmid of Johnson & Johnson, Ray Cohen of Axonics, formerly of Axonics, now leading several promising companies. We'll talk about the startup life with Ray. Anna Zwa, CEO of Moon Surgical, Josh Macauer of Stanford, And we'll close the entire event with a conversation and presentation with Aman Jetty of Intuitive Surgical. So lots going on, a lot of great companies, Boston Scientific, Abbott, and others. We really want to see you there. Go to west.devicetalks.com to register. All right, folks, thanks again for listening to this episode of Device Talks Weekly.